Bat music.
He's not a bat, he's a man who fights crime. And we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time. With John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minutes!
Hello, and welcome once again to Bat Minutes Returns, the podcast where we analyze, scrutinize, and have a mild swelling at the very thought of Tim Burton's 1992 Batman sequel, Batman Returns. I am one of the hosts, Niall McGowan.
I am another one of the hosts. I am the Ice Princess, John Parker, and Michael Keaton certainly gives all of us a mild swelling.
I am yet another host named Rick.
And I am yet another host named Julia.
We two, we're from the Mad Max Minute.
Hey, thank you for joining us again for this insane collection of 4 hosts. What's going on?
How will people ever be able to distinguish one voice from another? We all sound so similar.
As like I was going home, I'm listening to Switchblade Sisters at the minute, and they always have like their whole things like, oh, we bring in women who work in the movie industry to talk about their favorite genre movies, and they keep at the beginning constantly have to say like, this is this person's voice and this is this person's voice, because it's all women on the show all the time. But the thing is, because they're all American women, and it all is like, I'm never going to remember those voices. Like they all sound the same to me. But at least they tried, you know.
It can get difficult with podcasts, certainly. But there's no way I'm going to record any video. Sorry. I know you all want to look at me, but you can't.
But today, though, we're here to talk about minute 8 of Batman Returns, which begins with Alfred having a brief look into the sewer, and it ends with Chris Walken asking us all to imagine. Let's imagine all the people.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who had that in their head then. I was just sat here humming it.
But yeah, we do get this little bit here of Alfred sort of almost steps on the penguin's hand and sort of looks down and eyes up the sewer with suspicion. And even when as a kid I accepted this, but now I'm like, it's almost a little bit too cute for me. It's like Batman's butler happens to almost come across the penguin. I was like,
I'm okay with it.
It could have been a lot worse, but to me it was just a bit like, you don't need that there though. It's.
Now, you live in Liverpool with me, where you can go to the shops any time of day, no matter what, and you'll always bump into someone you know. Every time. So it's plausible.
Yeah, that is true.
Speaking of cutesy situations, I'm looking at the large wreath hung on, I'm assuming, a facade of a building behind Alfred, and just the general color of the buildings and the set itself, it almost reminds me of A Muppet Christmas Carol and the sets that they built for that movie.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. And he could play Scrooge.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, totally.
Well, if he can sing. Then again, that didn't really stop my campaign. I can't sing too well. But he's great in it. Like, I'm not insulting him.
I don't think the original Christmas Carol isn't a musical either, so I don't think it's like you have to be able to sing to play Scrooge.
No, but now you have to. It's been established by the Muppets, the best version of that damn story.
Easily,
definitely.
Yeah, well, if I just imagine like John refuses to watch any Christmas Carol, like if it's not a musical, I don't want to know.
I did watch this past Christmas. I did watch the Jim Carrey animated one. And it was okay. I wasn't a fan of his accent, though. I don't think he pulled that off at all.
I remember he was all kind of like, there's more of good evening. He's very coiled in, isn't he? I remember the bit weirded out because he plays like pretty much every character except like Gary Oldman. And isn't there like he plays the ghosts as well? And it's like the Ghost of Christmas Past is like a little flame or something that's got Jim Carrey's face on it. And it's really distracting. It's like...
Yeah, that seems odd.
It was distracting when they did that with Tom Hanks in the Polar Express movie. I would say it was more distracting when they did it with Jim Carrey, just because it's Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He's always distracting in everything he is, no matter what he's wearing.
Yes, and sometimes that it works. Like, that's the strength of it, but not always. You've got to really be selective over roles you're giving him in that kind of a field.
But yeah, but obviously you have a lot more Jim Carrey talk down the lines at some point.
I was about to say, we don't want to burn through all of our material right now.
Oh, yeah, jeez. I'm sure we'll forget all of it anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, and then we get Alfred again. So apparently he's going into Shrek's department store now. He's purchased all these wares. It looks like he's got a pretty full load there. Like, what's he going to buy in Shrek's? Like, how's he going to carry it? Because it's like he's got 2 arms full of presents already. So, geez.
See, this is definitely something I can't sympathize with, being someone who has lived largely in the suburbs all my life. When you go shopping, it's always been, okay, I'm going to this location for one specific place, and then before I go to another store, if I'm carrying something large, like a big bag of gifts, I would return it to my car and then go to the next shop. I've never been one of those people that goes on a shopping spree. Here in America, we've got those large shopping malls where you can go to 27 different stores without ever leaving a building, but I've never been one of those people to bring a bag of goods that I've purchased elsewhere into a new shop. It's just never something I've never done.
What I do, actually. I think I know I do, but that's because a lot of the places I shop are like spread out over the town center. So you might have to walk 10 minutes. So I don't have to keep going back to the car constantly. That'd be annoying. Yeah. I don't tend to go to the mall. We do have one, and I don't like it. I only use the cinema there, and that's because I get free tickets.
I usually just have like a backpack and stuff, so I just load everything until I physically can't carry anything anymore,
whether it's purchased or not.
Yeah. You've discovered his secret way of making funds here.
You don't make a lot of money in these movies by minute podcasts, I've discovered, so I have to take what I get.
Niall, you're supposed to pretend that we're really rich from it. Shh. It makes us look good. It makes the show look good. For some reason, talking about this, though, made me think of a weird quirk when you go to Dubai. If you go shopping in Dubai, and you go into a store, they'll take your bag and staple it closed. Yeah. So you can't steal anything, basically. Like, so you can't slip it into a bag from another shop, you know. So they'll actually staple it shut in some places, and it's like, that's interesting.
That doesn't create a very welcoming environment, though. So it's like, we do not trust you. So
no, it's Dubai. It's not. I won't insult a whole place. I quite like Dubai. I went like 4 times.
Yeah, they come in the shop. It's like, hey, I'm just here to buy something. But
Why should I groan? I make puns like that all the time.
That's the best comedy. Come on.
But yeah, we get the ascent now. We got look again, another little hint of the Penguin theme of that kind of like we'll see in a much grander scale later on in the movie. And then we get an ascent, not unlike the one at the end of the first Batman movie, actually, to get where we zoomed up through the towers of Gotham and saw Batman perched not perched, he was just standing. But
well, I thought it was a deliberate reference to that, actually, let me just say, because this is going to be a spoiler. You go up the tower, and who's at the top? Selina Kyle is there, who sort of becomes this larger-than-life sort of vigilante figure. So I thought it was meant to be a kind of parallel. And also because what you're about to see is her serving coffee. I thought it was tea. But we know Batman drinks tea. So it's like a kind of a flip of Bruce.
Yeah. I'd say you could also say, like, if not that Selina Kyle's up there, it's the fact that, it's the Max Shrek is up there. And these are we used to consider Batman to be this, powerful emblem of Gotham. And it's like, well, this is where the real power is. That these people, the Max Shrek and the mayor and whatnot. And actually, I will say, I mentioned in the last episode, the reference in the levers with the M machine in Fritz Lang's Metropolis. This shot of the top of the Shrek department store, this big tower with a big creepy cat head. This is also as a direct reference, parallel shot from the Tower of Babel in Metropolis, which is the machine making center of the entire Metropolis. That's Tim Burton, obviously very influenced by German expressionism, as we'll talk about throughout the rest of the entire movie. Yeah, there's a little bit of a love of German silent cinema is peeked through here already by seeing this grand sort of epic look at the top of Shrek Tower here. So
it's a very different style of shooting than we're used to, because we're used to a lot of very high octane energy in our movie, so to speak. And there is a lot of time devoted to this shot, trying to trick us into thinking that we're not just looking at a bunch of sets and miniatures, that we're looking at this grand scale building, but it takes a good quarter of the minute.
That you wouldn't get that happening now, I don't think. It would have to be speedier than that.
I actually like that they took so long doing this. It really emphasizes how separate from the city and the normal everyday people that are walking around on the ground doing their shopping and seeing the tree lighting and getting their paper. Max Schreck and the mayor and the others that are there are so separated from the everyday people.
Yeah, they're almost literally in an ivory tower.
Like, of course, as well, because the community is supposed to be down watching the tree lighting, and these guys aren't giving it the time of day. Like they're up talking business on top of this grand tower. So yeah, they are.
Well, they don't care about the community.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, as we'll discuss here actually throughout. Yeah, of course. Then we're now introduced to the interior of Shrek's office. We got here the new mayor. As a line talking, starts talking about trying to get Gotham, its first Merry Christmas in a very long time. And this is where we are not granted a return of Mayor Borg from the first movie. It was like,
alas.
Yes, we got the Mike Murphy. Now I know you guys will be like, oh, Mike Murphy from RTE and Ireland's winning streak, but it's not the same.
Of course.
It's not the same Mike Murphy. It's a different guy, right?
Everyone was thinking it.
And so we apparently this character is Mayor Roscoe Jenkins, which is not a cool name as Mayor Borg for one thing, right there.
Well, how am I supposed to make Star Trek jokes this season?
Yeah, it can't be done, John. It just cannot be done.
And I'm sure he considers himself the equal of Tommy Lee Jones.
The mayor's so sitting there looking a bit exasperated, and we have first sort of very low-key shot of Selina Kyle sort of coming in behind him. And obviously Selina Kyle's a character we'll talk a lot more about as it goes on, so maybe we won't focus on her a bit too much this week. You can tell right from the off a lot about this character just by the body language and the sort of nervousness and the sort of the hairs a little bit slightly disheveled and coming in very sort of nervously asking if he wants some coffee and whatnot. And just trying to do her job, but he kind of gives her a little, almost a sort of like a little, not dismissive, but kind of a very like, whatever. It can't be bothered with her kind of vibe you get from him. So.
Oh yeah, he doesn't even really consider her a person. She's just there to pour the coffee, really.
Yeah.
And as someone with really bad anxiety, watching her pour this coffee just was a nightmare, right? I sympathize with her so much because she clearly would have felt awkward asking him if she can take the cup.
Yeah.
So instead, she leans over and tries to do it, which fails. But she's committed to that tactic, so you can't back out now at this point, anxiety-wise. Like, I've got to just do it. Because it'd be even more awkward to stop and go, no, you know what, I need to pick the cup up.
I do wonder, though, as well, if this is good body acting by Michelle Pfeiffer, or if they actually had liquid in that pot. Because you feel the weight of it. If the way she's holding it, you feel like that's a really heavy pot of coffee that she's trying to hoist about with one hand.
Well, you might as well just fill it.
Yeah, but you imagine in her situation of having piping hot coffee, and it's just so close to your knuckles, but you can't really do anything about it. So she's probably just trying to power through. I'm like, this is agony, but I have to keep doing this. So, also, then we're introduced to the finest dressed man in Gotham, Max Schreck,
a man who wears gloves inside during a board meeting.
I love the audacity.
Those are strangling gloves. Those are the kind of gloves that you wear when you know that you're going to commit a crime.
Some could say maybe he's going to commit a crime soon.
Yeah. But if you look at Max Schreck throughout this entire film, he's always wearing gloves. He never has them off. It's weird. Like, what's the deal with the gloves? Is it like, because we had it in the first movie, because the Joker was constantly wearing gloves, but it was obviously a thing of like, well, it's because they don't want to have Jack Nicholson with white paint on his hands, getting white paint everywhere on the set, so he wears gloves all the time. And
unlike the time I painted my entire body blue and then left blue handprints all over your house.
Yeah.
Which was incredible.
But like, I think we had a sort of excuse of like, oh, well, maybe like his hands are very sensitive after his skin's very sensitive after falling into the chemicals, so he wears gloves because it's it
makes sense.
But Max Schreck is just like, no, he just wears these gloves all the time, and it's just maybe he was in some sort of industrial accident and he's got like hideous scarring on his hands or something, or maybe he's just a weirdo because he does fantastically dressed weirdo, but he's not a normal guy. And mostly that is because he's played by Christopher Walken.
Imagine Christopher Walken playing an everyman.
I guess he kind of does that in The Dead Zone. It's like, at the beginning, he's supposed, this is like an ordinary teacher who has now got these weird powers. It's like, I don't know if he was ever ordinary, man.
It's a bit like casting Jack Nicholson as the lead in The Shining. We've mentioned this before. He's too weird. He's too creepy.
This was pretty much like baby's first Walken for me. So this would have been the first thing I ever saw him in. Because like, what else was a kid going to see Chris Walken in, really?
Yeah, I think this would be my first taste of Chris.
It's certainly mine.
Julia, did you have any prior experience with Chris?
I'm trying to remember my first experience with Christopher Walken. It would not have been this movie. I didn't see this movie as a kid. We were not a Batman household.
What?
Oh.
Was it like a stringent, like your Batman is never to cross beyond these doors? Or was it just like, I'm just not interested in Batman?
Well, I grew up in a house of girls.
Okay.
None of which were particularly interested in, Batman, superheroes. And yes, those are two different categories.
No, they are. I agree with you 100%. He's not a superhero.
He's not a superhero. This I don't think I really ever saw this movie until I was an adult. So I'm trying to think what the first thing I saw Christopher Walken in was.
I think the next thing I saw him in would have probably been Pulp Fiction, which I did see as a kid. I probably shouldn't have.
I did not see until I was in my 30s. I'm going to have to check his IMDb because I just no idea.
But that's the thing, though, because this was my first taste of him. At the time, I took this at face value that like, oh, that's what Christopher Walken just looks like this. So
he pretty much does.
Yeah.
But I just took it as like that's his hair and stuff. Like you look at it now, it's like it's the wiggiest wig that's ever wigged. But at the time, I was like, yeah, he's got this crazy white hair and stuff. It's actually, I have to say, as a person who lost my hair a few years back to the ravages of just genetics. I've always got like anyone's got like a mildly cool haircut. I'm like, oh my god, look at that, that's so cool. But like I would take the Max Schreck hair. It's like I'd have that as a haircut. That's pretty cool to me.
I'll get you it as a lace front wig.
But for a good long while, like I was under the impression, like, yeah, this is what Chris Walken just looks like in his day-to-day life. We'll also say, talking about Metropolis, this wig is also a reference to Metropolis. This is supposed to be sort of evocative of the character of Rotwang. You could say that there's sort of like little intertextual references in that Rotwang is the character who invents the robot, that ends up taking on the personification of Maria and going out and sort of starting riots and whatnot. And
and he also invents the dance, the robot. That might not be true.
But basically, Rotwang is a puppeteer who uses a well-known figure from the underground to sow political and social discord for his own nefarious purposes, which is a bit like what Max Schreck does with the Penguin. So there you go. That's what.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm starting to feel like Tim Burton is passing from the realm of homage to something a bit more bald-faced. Bald-faced?
Yeah.
Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Speaking of Tarantino a minute ago, you could say, yeah, that's the same thing he does. Like Kill Bill. I like that, but some people say, oh no, he's just lifting things straight up from other films. That's not homage.
Oh.
And I suppose, yeah, Burton's doing that here. He's like, well, I don't care. I like that movie. I'm putting that directly in this.
No, I'd say, though, it's not in your face. I think it's a bit more like that's an intertextual reading of it. But like, I'd say it's still safely in homage myself. But
I think you could definitely argue that there are enough differences that you're safe, and that you couldn't just look at this and be like, oh, it's Metropolis, but with Batman.
Now that I would watch, though. That'd be great.
Which, well, yeah, you just take an old film reel or digital copy of Metropolis and you superimpose little scenes with Batman.
Bliss.
Beating up poor people.
Well,
that is what he does. So
you could argue Batman is, like the very image of the evil capitalists. He's essentially beating up poor folk who have no option but a life of crime because the economy is a shambles.
I know I was like, they do somewhat address that in one of the animated shows where I believe that's in the continuity of Batman the animated series. The reason that Dick Grayson leaves to become Nightwing is because him and Bruce have a major falling out over Bruce violently interrogating an ex-con in his house in front of his family just to get like information out of him. And Robin's all like, you can't think his kids are here. You can't do this. And Batman's just like, shut up. I'm going to do what I need to do.
Well, I don't want to be comparing apples to oranges, but I feel like the whole "you're rich, stop beating up poor people" was done really well in the Netflix show The Defenders, where Luke Cage went up to Danny Rand and he's like, listen, dude, you've got a multinational corporation with billions of dollars and the ability to make your fist glow and punch holes through things. Don't beat up poor people.
Yeah, it's not their fault. They've been driven to this, damn it.
But to be fair, though, in the Batman animated show, you find out later on in that episode, because at this point, Dick Grayson's like, I can't work with you anymore. This is disgusting. I'm out of here. And then you find out that same guy who was, an ex-con unemployed guy, down on his luck with a family support, days later was hired by Wayne Enterprises and was given a job, and his life has gone into an upswing. So it's like, Bruce Wayne is he was, he's helping the guy out as well, but he was also like, I need to get this information out of him. So it's kind of like he's
out of guilt.
Well, yeah, it could be. Maybe that's what he does all the time. You never know. But.
Well, going back to Max Schreck for a second, again, we don't want to just blow all our information in one go. We're not going to just drop everything in one episode because you'd be bored for the rest of the show. But I did like one thing that I read, that David Bowie was in contention to play Shrek.
That's right, yeah.
Oh my God, that would have been amazing.
He'd previously been in contention to play the Joker as well in the last film.
That's right, yeah.
But he turned down the part of Max Schreck so he could be in Fire Walk with Me, the Twin Peaks movie. Which is
hell, baby, goddamn,
really?
No.
Yeah, which I absolutely love. I love that movie. I know some people don't, but it's quite weird that he turned it down to be in Fire Walk with Me, considering he's in about 5 seconds of that film. Couldn't he do both?
I'm quite thankful though, because it's like, again, this is my introduction to Chris Walken, the wonders of Chris Walken. So it's like, I'm happy that Bowie turned it down, quite frankly.
I think Bowie could have done it, though. I mean, right. I'm one of the few people who likes him playing Tesla in Thingy. Oh,
The Prestige. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed him playing Tesla in The Prestige. But imagine, if you will, a world where David Bowie took the role as Max Schreck and the role of the agent in Fire Walk with Me was given to Christopher Walken.
That would be amazing.
Fire Walken with Me.
It writes itself.
That'd be great, though, because, not to get into spoilers for season 3 of Twin Peaks, but when Philip Jeffries, that character, is reintroduced as a talking teapot, there's a guy in there doing an impression of David Bowie's voice. And it's like, that would have meant that some guy would have had to come in and been like, yes, it's me, Philip. Like, having to do. Oh no, baby, it probably could have got Walken back to do it. To be fair, but
well, I don't know, because David Bowie actually, he could have done it technically because he hadn't died. They could have recorded with him, but he said to David, he's like, I don't know, I'm getting quite ill, and he didn't like the accent.
Yeah.
He said my accent was terrible. So what you can do is you can use the old footage of me, but you need someone to overdub me.
Yeah.
Don't use any of the audio that I provided.
It is very noticeable in that one little flashback of where you're like, I've seen this scene dozens of times, and then when you're watching it in the season 3, it's like, that's not David Bowie's voice. What the hell? And they've just put in this other guy. And it sounds completely different to everything else in the scene. It's like, all right, yeah. Maybe that's why you got so snubbed by the Emmys, Twin Peaks. It's like you couldn't have got.
Oh.
But yeah, also like a actually little thing, coincidental thing, is that Chris Walken has heterochromia, which means he has 2 different eye colors. And you know who else had 2 different eye colors? David Bowie. So,
well, sort of. He actually doesn't have different colors. It looks like he has different colors. Do you want me to blow your mind?
It's already been blown previously, but yeah, that's correct.
It's an illusion because he, as a kid, got in a fight and he got hit in the eye. Right. So now he's dead now, but from that point on, one of his eyes was permanently dilated. It couldn't change, where your iris changes, it all works like a camera lens, permanently dilated eye. So it looks a different color. It looks dark, but it's not. It's actually the same color.
Well, that's that little bit of Walken Bowie connection disproven within seconds of it coming to life.
No, but they both have. Not. I don't mean this in a nasty way. They both have a funny eye.
Both have weird,
peculiar, even.
Yeah, we got a lot of talk here then about he's trying to build a power plant in Gotham, notably different from the original draft because Daniel Waters originally had him pitching building a chemical plant, which actually would make sense because the last chemical plant Gotham had got blown up by Batman. So I guess they need one.
And every city needs a chemical plant.
Yeah, totally.
How else are you going to process your chemicals? Come on.
Exactly. Gotham City's been running without chemicals since that happened. Max Schreck is finally here to save the day.
They've had to import everything from China.
Those Chinese chemicals are not the same, man.
But yeah, I do love the fact that we get the little model of the power plant in the background with like the little truck in front and stuff.
That is the most ridiculous building design I think I've ever seen in my entire life. It is a pyramid with smokestacks coming out of the top.
It looks like a crematorium or something. It doesn't look like a power plant or anything.
Whoever Shrek hired to design that building should be thrown out of a window or something.
Well, I think he hires German expressionists, to be honest.
That would explain it.
I do love, though, it really reminded me of, like, if you mention like the building of any power plant, I'm automatically like, oh, it's like when Homer was asked when he entered, the Frank Grimes episode of The Simpsons, where he's tricked into entering like a children's competition for like building or designing a power plant. And then Homer shows up with like just the same power plant they have. And then he adds wings for wind resistance. And then you look at this, there's little things at the side. It's like, oh my God, it's got wings for wind resistance. This is the greatest power plant ever. And he's not got the racing stripe, though. You need the racing stripe makes it look quite sharp. This one, maybe Max Schreck would be more successful in his pitch had the model had a racing stripe. But tragically, that was not to be. It does have those red and white stripes, though, and we'll see that a lot throughout this movie. That's a weird visual motif that constantly recurs throughout the entire movie. This peppermint white stripes looking friggin' red and white stripes. We saw it briefly outside in Gotham Plaza with the red and white tent. Here's another shot of it, and we'll obviously mention it every time it pops up, but it seems to be a visual motif Tim Burton fell in love with. Of like, oh, red and white stripes. I'm all about this now.
Is it a kind of candy cane thing? A Christmas
Could be. Even
thing?
a carnival thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. A dark carnival.
And but so it was good. It worked, as I said, worked for the white stripes all those years. So looks pretty good here. That's the thing, though. When you see this scene when you're a kid, this is all like, just get to the penguin. What are you doing? Like, much like the meeting in Grissom's office where you're like, why is this taking so long? Come on. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh, I love this. Because it's just like Walken sitting around being a weirdo. talking about things in a Walken way, and it's all shindigs and conniving, scheming, and whatnot going on with meeting with the mayor and stuff. I'm like, oh, I love all this now.
No, I'm the same. I love any of these scenes that just sort of build the world and sort of set up the characters and the plots and the scheming. But as a kid, you're just like, fast forward, I want some penguin.
What's really disappointing about this movie, from the angle of watching it as an adult, is that the master evil plan boils down to Max wanting to fast forward through some municipal red tape. That's the whole point of anything he does in this movie, is that he wants a mayor that's not going to give him any trouble with permits, variances, tax incentives, or anything like that. He just wants a puppet government so that he can build his giant battery on the outskirts of town.
Yeah, it's not the most thrilling, is it?
It's nowhere near as nefarious as Batman Forever, or even Batman and Robin, or even just what the Joker did in the first movie. It's very mundane.
Yeah.
I think it's like Daniel Waters literally took the idea of like a power-hungry villain. And it's like, what if all he wants to do is just have literal power, like control the power of a city? So he can, I think, we'll get into it later, but its whole scheme is to stockpile it. So it's like, stockpile power? What do you do? Just have like a warehouse full of electricity? What is this?
That's how he does his hair. So he needs it.
Well, it's working for him, so I'll give him that. But yeah, we do get a lot of like, much like in the first movie where there's all stuff about like, oh, there's files in a thing, and it's all stuff that like, even Tim Burton's a bit like, I'm not too fussed about why Jack Napier has to go to the chemical plant. There's documents he needs to get or something. And this is all just sort of like, you need a bit of, to set up the whole plot, basically. You need to have this little bit of jargon with the mayor and Max Schreck.
What's funny about what the mayor has to say in response to the idea of the power plant is that he says, we've got enough power to get us into the middle of the next century. We're in the early 90s. The next century is only 8 years away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Like, middle of next century, if you're in the 1950s, that's 100 years. That's really cool.
But that's the thing, like, it's... Maybe the mayor's concern is just like, well, how long is a mayoral term? Is he just like, as long as my 4 years is fine. Like, I don't care about the power.
Yeah.
That's all these people care about. Come on. It's true to life.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, all Mayor Bohr cared about was getting his hot dogs and balloons. And all that this mayor cares about is just like, hey, as long as I've got power while I'm around, I don't give a crap about the rest of it. So you can go and do it. But I'm going to be dead by the middle of the next century. So what do I care?
That's what's got this world into the mess it's in now. That kind of attitude.
Yeah, exactly. But we just get some fantastic walk-in dialogue here. Like, was it like your analysts are looking at it 1% per annum? That's not growth. That's a mild swelling. And just stuff like that.
Ooh.
It's fantastic. It just rolls off your tongue, that stuff.
Speaking of things rolling off your tongue, one of the most memorable things I think I've ever seen Christopher Walken in is a sketch from Saturday Night Live where he is the guest at a Confederate plantation homestead. And you start off the sketch.
I know what sketch you're talking about.
You got Rachel Dratch and you got Amy Poehler, and they're out on the porch. And Chris Parnell comes out as the master of the house, but they are sitting on the porch and they are waiting for the return of Colonel Angus.
Oh.
To return to the homestead. And Christopher Walken comes in dressed as this Confederate colonel, and the whole sketch is just him and these others talking about the many fine qualities of Colonel Angus and how sometimes he may be rough, but he's always sweet. And if he ever overstays his welcome, you just tap him on the head. And I think my favorite part is where Colonel Angus talks about how he's not the man he used to be after his terrifying jaw injury at the Battle of Bushy Beaver.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
Again, though, this is a recurring theme of this season is like bringing up things that are big in America that just aren't over here. Because I've never seen an entire episode of Saturday Night Live because it just doesn't. It's not a thing over here. It's just like I know what it is, and I know that like the Blues Brothers and stuff came from that. But I know Walken from like Cowbell. I've seen that around YouTube and stuff. I know that's Saturday Night Live, but everything about Saturday Night Live to me is just like. What was this? Like, you get celebrities in and their sketches and stuff, and
there was a period in the 80s. There was a period in the 80s where we tried to rip it off, and we had an English one called. It was just Saturday Live, I think, but it didn't last very long. It was like three seasons, if you want to speak American style seasons, and that was it. But it had a few big names on, like you had Rick Mail. He was on it quite a bit. Craig Charles was on it from Red Dwarf, things like that. Ben Elton was the host who writes like Blackadder and things. That's probably what a lot of listeners might know him from. But it just didn't take off the same.
Yeah, no, it could be a differences in between. Because I do know people in England who like who download Saturday Night Live because they're like, oh yeah, I love it. And I've watched it myself. I'm like, I don't get it, man. Like, it's one of these. It's a cultural thing. Maybe it's like it's not ringing the bells for me. It's not ringing the cowbell for me. I'm just kind of.
I get the impression it's one of those that you kind of need to watch on a regular basis and get like into a groove.
That's every time I always see people talking about it online, though. They seem to be continually talking about how it's not as good as it used to be. So it's just one of these things. It's like, apparently it was good back in like 1980. But
Saturday Night Live is sort of like popular music. You're always going to say that the best that Saturday Night Live ever was that region right around your teenage years to your mid to late 20s. It's just like popular music. Once you reach 30, everything on the radio is garbage and nowhere near as good as what you used to listen to.
You're not wrong.
The same thing with Saturday Night Live.
So maybe like a 20-year-old watching it now thinks it's great.
Mm-hmm. Whereas someone who's maybe 40 or 50, who has been with the show from its inception, would be like, "Oh man, I remember that first season with Chevy Chase and John Belushi and Gilda Radner and all the other rest."
That's one of them.
That was the top.
But then who's seen it as we've gone on a little tangent to talk about Saturday Night Live? I guess
that's what we do around here, Dan.
Yeah. But has anyone got anything about this minute that they? Before shall we wrap up, or
I'm all tapped out.
I just want to add real quick. I figured out where I first saw Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 1991. He did a TV movie called Sarah Plain and Tall with Glenn Close.
Oh bloody hell! That's quite a duo.
And it's when is it set? Like the turn of the century.
I love it.
Like early 1900s, maybe. Like out in Oklahoma, Midwest somewhere. And it's a widower. He's a widower. And he puts an ad in the paper looking for a wife because he just can't handle 2 kids and his farm. He can't handle it all himself. So Glenn Close answers his ad and comes to visit. And they get to know each other. And eventually they get married.
This sounds quite good, actually.
Is there a scene though where he's like, when he places the ad, he's like, "I'm looking for someone called Sarah, and she should be plain but tall." And this,
I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
I should also warn listeners now. It's like, now that he's in the movie, every scene with Max Schreck, I'm going to be doing Walken. So just prepare yourselves. You thought
that is very fair.
But if you thought my Jack Palance was bad last year, oh boy, you're in for a treat. But yeah, I'm all out for this minute.
Yes.
Yep. So.
We will swoop away into the eve. But before we do, would you like to tell our listeners again where they can find Mad Max Minute?
Certainly. If anyone is interested in listening to the Mad Max Minute, they can go to our website, madmaxminute.com. If you are scrubbing through old episodes, you might want to go back to Season 3 of the Mad Max Minute, where we cover Beyond Thunderdome. Look specifically for minutes 34, 35, and 36. You might hear some familiar voices. And then once you've done that, if you want to connect with us, we are on Twitter at MadMaxMinute, on Facebook by searching for Mad Max Minute, where you can find our listener page, Mad Max Minute Beyond Microphone.
Yeah, make sure you do go there. I don't post on a lot of groups often, but occasionally I'll post. I read everything in there, though. So if you post to anyone listening, I'll see it in that Mad Max group. I'll like it. Say, I'm here just to let John know. But we have our own group as well, the Bat Minutes Listeners Cave. We've rechristened it because we decided to be creative, unlike before, where we weren't. So send us a message in there, and you can join as long as you're not a spam bot or...
Yes, please, no robots.
No robots. We're against droids. We don't like them. Since the Clone Wars, we are prejudiced against droids. But do join us there and send us a tweet. We like getting tweets. Niall's been taking over the Twitter a lot lately. I haven't been as active on that. So you'll probably be talking to Niall. That'll be exciting for you. That sounded sarcastic. I didn't mean that. And join us again on Friday, because we'll be back to round out the week with minute 9 of Batman Returns.
Next time on Awkward Adjutant, as a simpering secretarial suggestion is backtracked into a question which Shrek-shaped son will summon his sire to satiate the masses' desires. Find out on Friday. Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.